Welcome once again to another walk. It's been a while since I actually recorded a walk and uploaded it. It was a bit of a difficult time to put something together for you guys, but hopefully from this week onwards the uploads will be regular. So I am doing something different today. I am recording the walk live. So the quality of the audio may differ. It may be a bit less than recording it at home with a proper studio. But we'll see where this takes us. I just thought this is a new and a much more interesting concept. I felt like I really want you to be part of this walk and engage with me in the discussion. This way you can feel and hear the ambient sounds, the sounds of the beautiful birds and everything. I also did upgrade the camera. So yeah, while I was away I was still sort of putting things together for this. Now, since this is live, you may find that during certain moments there'll be silence, there'll be stillness, because I will speak of whatever I feel like needs to be said in a moment. There is no script, no nothing. So if there's any silence, then that's exactly what needs to be expressed in that moment. It's a beautiful day today, a bit cold, but definitely warmer than a few weeks back. So I thought today perhaps we can talk about the concept of right and wrong, the concept of morality. Where does one get their moral guidance from? How do you choose? How do you figure out what is right or wrong in a situation? You see, most of the time the way we assess our decisions is based on previous experience or previous conditioning, so to speak. So from when we're a young age, like the kid crying down there, we are taught what is right and wrong. We are taught that you should be doing this instead of this. We are taught the commandments. We are taught to follow the right and move away from the wrong. But the nature of existence doesn't really have the concept of right or wrong in itself. Right or wrong is essentially invented by us. And so this will pose a difficulty, especially if you are an individual who's really looking to explore into different dimensions of life that not a lot of humans explore. And of course, whenever you are entering uncharted territories, what you'll find is that since humans have not explored such a territory, there isn't a pathway, there is no guideline. And so you'll find yourself in the midst of an eternal nothingness, really. Just until more and more humans infiltrate that field. So, right and wrong. The way I'd like to go about it is to, instead of base decisions on belief systems, Because belief systems are extremely fragile. They are broken one day and new ones have to be built. They are simply changed day by day. You may feel in a certain way yesterday, but today you feel absolutely different, both emotionally and in terms of belief. And so basing morality entirely upon belief system isn't sustainable, as I said, especially when you get to uncharted territories of exploration. And by that I mean fields and areas of ideas that not many people have explored before. Or perhaps people have explored it before, but it's just not out in the open in society. Not everyone is talking freely about it. Many of these ideas we talk about on these walks. So therefore we have to find a different compass, a different guide that takes us into successful exploration, that takes us into or onto a path that is neither right or wrong, but definitely gives us a guide as to what should be done in the moment. And so that's the first step, flipping the concept of what is right and what is wrong into what should be done. This way you are beginning to transcend right and wrong. This way you are not acting purely out of memory. You are beginning to transcend memory itself. You are fully alive in the moment and you are fully perceiving what should be done in the moment. Excuse me. And so to really sort of instill this, to really embody or to really aid in the transcendence beyond right and wrong, what you can do is put together certain imaginations or certain fields of a different perspective. So I will give you examples of what I mean here. So one way is you could visualize the entire universe or the entire existence, cosmos. Imagine that the entire cosmos had a personality. What sort of personality would it have? This is quite interesting to think about, because if we look at everything within nature, we see that there are characteristics that are absolutely beautiful. So one of these characteristics is nature is versatile. So nature adapts in whatever situation it is put in. Another characteristic is that nature is indifferent. Nature has no discrimination between what is happening or not. Now you may argue that there is a lack of cognitive ability within nature, but the beauty is that if we align ourselves with nature in the way it responds, in the way it acts, we are now tuning onto the same plane of reality, or the same plane of perception. That's it, perception. And so now whenever you are placed with, or whenever you encounter a sort of scenario, whenever there is a problem that requires solving, you are now encountering this problem with exactly the same characteristics that nature would encounter these problems. For example, if a tree is growing next to a wall where the wall is blocking a lot of sunlight, then naturally it is programmed, or not naturally, there is the change there's a motivation, not so much of a motivation. I don't want to personify the situation too much here, but essentially there is a instinct of the tree to really grow out of the way of the wall, so that it is now in a position where it reaches, or sunlight reaches it sufficiently. And so a question that could be posed here is, how far do you go with this? Where do you draw the line? Because what about good and evil, right? And essentially good and evil could also be placed into categories of what's right and wrong. If you eliminate the concept of evil, if you eliminate the concept of good, what you are now doing is you are giving yourself a room to be able to see the situation for what it is. You are now transcending it once again. And so, to give another example of the tree and what the tree would be doing in this case, it's essentially that the tree, if blocked by the wall, the tree in its might would eventually break the wall. It would eventually grow into the wall and fracture it and break it. And so this could be seen as a force that is evil in one perspective, but essentially is exactly what is happening in this moment, right? The way we try to attribute, or sometimes of course, the way we try to attribute natural disasters, earthquakes, tornadoes, volcano eruptions, the way we try to put these in a bad light because they have killed thousands of people with emotions, people with lives, people with ideas, and so we point our finger towards God. Why did you do this? Why would you allow such a thing if you are so merciful? And so some people try to say, well, these people deserve it because so and so, they were bad people, which is absolutely silly. It's a silly way of looking at it. Well, the truth of the matter is that the natural disaster that happens to kill lots of people is no different to you scratching your arm. As you scratch your arm, or as you engage in certain activities such as drinking alcohol, for example, you are killing off a lot of cells, and these cells in your body, they aren't really cared about so much, especially because they are not so much within your everyday perception. You don't sit there and get to know every single cell in your body, right? And it's because they don't portray any form of emotion or expression as much as a human being does. And so essentially these examples here are trying to show you that there is a different light in which you can see life. This light is much broader. It's much more of a super view as opposed to the individualistic perspective that is restricted by self-belief or restricted by prior conditioning. And so what's interesting here is to look at the entire concept of exploration. We are always motivated to explore further. But at times what we do is, as we explore, we naturally draw lines around the furthest part that we have explored. We draw a perimeter of the territory we have explored, and we then adjust ourselves within this perimeter, and this we call the comfort zone. Now, at the edge of this perimeter are the ideas, or the line of the perimeter are the ideas that can be seen as limiting beliefs. These are the conclusions, the conclusive aspects of exploration. So a lot of religions, they provide us with a very conclusive ideology that this is the way it is. And so what this does, it sort of eliminates the motivation, the natural instilled energy within us that thrives into the direction of the unknown, into the direction of the exploration. If you already know God and God's attributes and why He is doing everything He is doing through self or through belief systems, then this motivation to really understand what is happening is dumbed down, is dulled down. And the purpose of this walk is not to try and debunk any of these conclusive beliefs, these limiting belief systems in any way. That's not the purpose of this walk. But the purpose here is to show you that the opportunity for you to expand your horizons, to continue to explore, is being limited by this perimeter. Now, some people have this perimeter as a line simply drawn on the ground, but some people have this perimeter as very thick walls of brick. And so what happens is exploration becomes much more difficult. They have a much more crystallized perspective of life. And so especially for people like this, bringing it back to what we were initially speaking of, which is the concept of right and wrong, the concept of morality. Essentially, for them it becomes much harder to readjust their morality, their moral compass. And so if you find yourself in a situation where you are extremely crystallized, and honestly the biggest step is to realize that you have a very crystallized personality, right? Because not everyone is willing to admit this. But if you do find yourself in such a place, you just have to observe the walls that you have created yourself. You are the architect of these walls. The bricks have been given to you by society, but you are the architect of these walls. You have designed their build. You have put them together yourself. And so you will know how to take each brick down one by one. And the beauty in this is that when the wall has been brought down, you are not limiting or making your comfort zone any smaller. You have just opened up lots of paths you could walk out of, you could walk through. And the reason why we build walls is to essentially protect ourselves from the unknown. And so it's for this reason, if at times we speak of concepts that are pretty heavy, we call them, or pretty deep, people just don't listen. They aren't very receptive to them. It's because they have blocked themselves, or essentially some people say that they're just not ready to enter this field of exploration. And honestly, it's a shame really, because there is so much to learn from within yourself alone. Everything could be learned from within you. And this potential cannot be seen if the wall we have built around the perimeter of our comfort zone is extremely high. It's a beautiful day today.
Why do I want to jump? Because firstly, this damn water.
I'll be honest with you, whenever I walk past people, they're just like, what the hell's going on here? Because I've got the camera strapped with the mic and talking to myself. They don't realize I'm talking to you guys. Well, I guess I'll call it a day. Thank you so much for walking along. And if you have any discussion points, any ideas you'd like to discuss, then please do let me know. I hope you like this style of the walk. If you have any feedback on this, do mention it. And see you on the next walk.